What it do? Welcome to a new episode of Locked On Bucks. On today's show, we got to call a spade a spade. The Bucks had a really disappointing loss tonight to the Washington Wizards. Yes, the Wizards team that has 61 losses on the season. Yes, the Wizards team that was led by, check my notes again, Corey Kispert without Kyle Kuzma in the lineup. Real disappointing L. Me and Frank are going to break down the game and discuss if there's any troubling trends coming from this Bucks team in regards to their closing lineup, as well as their road woes that we have seen. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis. You can catch me weekly on the Technical Foul and the Pack a Day podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod, as well as the founder of brewhoop.com. We truly do appreciate you for tuning in, and we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. And Frank, my goodness, the Bucks lose 117 to the Washington Wizards. And facts of the matter here, terrible loss for the Bucks. Poor effort throughout the game. First half, especially poor shooting. They were 23% from three in this game. Poor transition defense. Like, I know the Bucks were without Damian Lillard, but that does not excuse this in any way, shape, or form. This is just one of those losses that's super disappointing, and particular to me because we've seen it throughout the season. The Bucks have played down to competition. We have seen it, but we also are aware now this team is less than 10 games left in the regular season. This is the time when you want to see them really starting to amp things up, really starting to get into good habits as they head into this postseason push. And the effort that we saw tonight is not encouraging.
I mean, same shit, different day, right? Like this is who this team is, right? They're going to have games where they look great against legit, contending teams, and then they will turn right around and wipe away any pleasant memories you have of that with these kinds of just lackluster performances. And I mean, the Wizards shot horrendously today. What were they?
Yes.
9 out of 38 from three. I mean, can you imagine being told that the Wizards were going to shoot 23% from three and would lead basically, the entire of the second half, and the Bucks would need a furious comeback to even make it close. So again, I mean, and this is not just a bad Wizards team. This is a bad version of a bad Wizards team, right?
Thank you. Yes.
If you watch this game and you didn't recognize a bunch of the names on the Wizards, that's normal because they have a bunch of random, late season signings, two-way type guys that played major minutes for them tonight and stuck it to the Bucks. And again, just a brutal combination of, I thought in the first half, just unserious, unprofessional effort in the first half. I thought the no better summation of that half than Giannis gets fouled with 5 seconds to go in the half,
Yep.
misses 2 free throws, and then the Bucks just literally off the second miss, was it Anthony Gill, just goes end to end for a layup.
Yep.
I mean, just completely flat-footed defense, and that was really the perfect summation. And the Wizards shot so horrendously that they couldn't get any real separation from the Bucks. And it just felt like late in the first quarter, Giannis goes out with 2 fouls, and it felt like the Bucks just kind of decided we don't really need to try that hard tonight. And the Wizards didn't build a big lead or anything like that, but they flipped a small deficit into, a 5-6 point advantage and just never gave it up, right? I mean, that kind of just flipped the game. And, I think there was some good effort late in the game when the Bucks were like, oh, we're going to lose to the Washington Wizards. But, again, I mean, this ranks right up there with that Grizzlies loss, I think, in terms of just kind of baffling road performances. And, Eric Name asked Doc about WTF with these road games. And Doc was like, I am observing and taking notes of all the things we're doing, literally like at all times when we're on the road, like why can this team not perform with the level of, I think you used professionalism that you'd expect of them. They're by far the worst road team of any of the East's, I think, top 5 or 6 teams. The only one that's below 500 on the road. We've talked about, the Jekyll and Hyde thing where they are, second in the league in terms of net rating against top 10 teams, and they are just positively mediocre to bad when they play these mediocre to bad teams. Like they just, do not take advantage of the talent benefit that they have. And so Dame Lillard being absent or not, I mean, Jesus, guys, like that,
Unacceptable.
like that, he shouldn't need Dame to win this game. And, typical Bucks game though, like Giannis, the metronome, 35 points on 71% shooting or whatever he had, triple double. They're now 5-5 when he has a triple double this year. Like previously they've been, phenomenal when Giannis gets a triple double because it means that he's setting other guys up. But Chris put up numbers. I didn't think Chris played particularly well. I was surprised that he was almost 50% from the field. It felt like he had a really slow start.
He did.
And again, like just not enough, right? Just not enough. And you look at the numbers for this, it was actually both teams had below average nights offensively. So this was another night where the offense really just could not get out of, second gear. And the shooting was obviously a huge part of that. But, you look at the points in the paint numbers, 70 to 56. 56 is fine, although, the Wizards have no rim protection. So like that number probably should have been higher, and to give up 70 points, again, we'll talk about some of the lineup decisions that Doc made in the fourth quarter, which contributed to that, I thought. But yeah, I mean, again, it's just like, all right, guys, like you're satisfied that you can beat good teams, and so you're just gonna, it just seems like it's a chore for them to play games like this. Like they just can't. They just like do not want to be out there playing these games, with the exception of Giannis, because Giannis is just the exception to everything. But the rest of these guys, it just feels like, like a lot of just going through the motions, and plenty of blame to go around tonight for sure.
Yeah, and you hate to see that because you think of like the Bucks over their last 4. I mean, now they are 1-3 over their last 4 games. If you include that home loss to the Lakers, the LeBron James-less Lakers, and then against the Pelicans, there's no Brandon Ingram. Of course, the Hawks didn't have Trae Young. The Bucks were able to win that one, but then you get this Washington game, and it's like the Bucks, yes, no Dame, but like this is a Wizards team, like you mentioned, that is very, very shorthanded. Like you don't want to see that type of effort. And you brought up the transition play to end the second quarter, the one that really like blew me by the end of the game, because like you said, the effort in the first half was poor. Third quarter, you started to see it pick up a little bit for the Bucks. It's just that shots weren't falling. A lot of open threes were not falling for the Bucks. But in the fourth quarter, the Bucks are able to scramble and claw their way back into the game. Malik Beasley misses another 3 down the stretch. Chris Middleton gets the rebound, puts it back up through contact, and now it's a 2-point game. The Bucks are in a scramble mode, and the Wizards just throw the ball down the court. Anthony Gill, I believe it was, gets behind the defense, but Pat Connaughton hustles, gets back, forces the miss. There are no other Bucks players down there. Like Gill gets his own rebound, puts it back up. It's a 4-point game, 8 seconds left. Bucks lose. Like it was
perfect. Perfect way for this team to lose this game, right?
I'm telling you, it like you said, how that play in the second quarter to end the quarter really summed up the game. Like no more fitting way for them to end this game with the process and the effort that we saw throughout it, for no one to hustle back and just let them get another bucket to really put this game out of reach. You mentioned the Bucks being killed in the paint. It just all around, like early on, like this game just feels disjointed. Like I know both Chris and Giannis were in the foul trouble early. They were both taken out in the first quarter. We saw an all bench lineup for a while, and yet and still, like that isn't even when the Wizards got their separation really. Like that's the third quarter where they really opened it up. So just really disappointing to see how the Bucks came out in this one. And there's a lot more to discuss from this one. Want to talk a bit more about the Bucks closing lineups as well as just some individual performances that we saw tonight right after this. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, plus more. So no matter whether you're into power or speed or style, eBay Motors is going to have you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what it is that you're looking for. Plus, with the eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or you get your money back. I'm going to run that back for you. It's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win, unlike the Bucks tonight in Washington. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guarantee Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Time is valuable. You can't get that back when you spend it with somebody or on something. So we truly do appreciate you tuning in to Locked On Bucks every single day throughout the week. Special shout out to the everydayers who come through Monday through Friday as well. If you like having sports talk just on your TV, you might just be in the habit of throwing on ESPN or Fox News or Fox Sports just to have it on, just to have it in the background. But do you find yourself having to lower the volume every so often when you do that? If so, you should make the switch over to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel with programming from all of the Locked On Podcast Network. So you'll get all the biggest stories without all of the screaming. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports today on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which brings you your team every day. Frank, we were just talking a little bit about some guys who showed up. We mentioned Giannis with the triple-double. Unreal that they have a 5-5 record, 5-5 record with him getting triple-doubles this season. Chris eventually got the shooting together, and we needed a lot more from this team tonight. You look at the other three starters in the Bucks lineup. You had Pat Bev. You had Malik Beasley, who, man, rough night for him. And then you also had Brook Lopez.
A lot of like Malik either is like pretty good or just completely like useless offensively. Just like there have been a lot of like 1 for 10 shooting nights from Malik.
Yeah.
And like a couple games we had like back-to-back 20-point games. And then I don't know, it just feels like these have been cropping up more regularly. He's definitely been a guy that over the past couple months has come back down to earth a bit.
Yeah.
But you know, it is what it is.
1 of 10 tonight from 3. 1 of 10 from 3. The other three starters from the field, just in general, were 6 of 26 from the field tonight, 23%. We saw Pat Bev sprain his ankle in the third quarter. He was on the bench stretching it out, but he never came back into the game. Bobby Portis got off to a pretty good shooting start from the game. I believe he was 5 of 8 to start. But then he went 1 of 6 in the fourth quarter. So, Frank, when you were saying it just wasn't looking good for Bobby, I was, yep, exactly that. He finished the game 6 of 14. Jay was 2 of 7. Pat Connaughton was 4 of 11. I did mention like the hustle plays we saw from Pat Connaughton. He was involved in a really effort play down the stretch where the Bucks were missing threes and there was offensive rebounds, just trying to find a bucket. But it just was not a good night for this Bucks team. And you saw the closing lineup here. I saw some people actually complaining about Giannis taking a breather in the fourth quarter. And they're like, why in the world would Doc Rivers take him out in the fourth quarter? But like, look at how the game was playing out. He played the entire third quarter. He needed a breather. Doc subbed him out for Chris with I think 6 minutes left in the game. He sat on the bench for 2 minutes, 2 minutes. He came back to finish out the last 4 minutes of the game. There was going to be a point where Giannis needed a breather, and Doc took it by taking him out and putting Chris back in. I'm not mad at that decision, but when you're looking at the closing lineups for this team, I mean, we saw that bench group with Giannis making a run, making a push in that third, who Doc was leaning on throughout the fourth quarter. We saw AJ Green come out for Malik Beasley, and that's a minor one. There are larger conversations about the closing lineup here, but on a night where Bees doesn't have it, I would have kept AJ in this particular game, just seeing how the flow of the game was looking with him in there. But We also didn't see Brook Lopez down the stretch. It was a Bobby Portis, Giannis Antetokounmpo front court closing lineup in this game against a Wizards team that we mentioned was not that big, because keep in mind, they were shorthanded coming into the game, and Marvin Bagley III got injured during the game as well. So he was no longer available. And it was just a closing lineup where you're like, was this the best go of it? So, Frank, I do want to ask you, looking at how things have been going with Doc at the helm and looking at how the Bucks have been closing games so far this season, do you have any reactions or concerns or even suggestions on how the Bucks should look to run out lineups when they're closing games down the stretch?
So we talked about when Griff was around that he never played Giannis at the 5, right? That and some of that was, I think, due to Jay Crowder being out for a while, so he didn't have, and Chris wasn't really out much at all when Griff was around, but Crowder being out limited some of the optionality to play Giannis at the 5 with Bobby and Brook on the bench. So it's kind of like, it was a little interesting though, because it's like it seemed like Griffin's history would suggest that he would have wanted to be a bit funkier and play Giannis at 5. He never did. And looking at the stats right now, Giannis has still only played 130 possessions all season long at the 5. They're plus 13 net rating, so whatever, small sample, but it's worked. I mean, that's pretty typical. That it has generally been a positive lineup that when they've tried it in the past. And again, it's situational, but on a night like tonight, Brook went out with, I think, 2 or 3 minutes left in the third quarter, didn't come back. I mean, Brook didn't have a great game by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, again, he can protect the rim. Like if you're worried about, especially getting blow-bys and, lack of discipline at the point of attack in the half court, obviously Brook helps there, but was not really involved offensively. Again, Giannis is like the only guy trying to get Brook Lopez involved, by the way. He did it again tonight where he was trying to feed him inside, but I think he missed, 3 threes, and it obviously just wasn't a game where Brook was as influential as you need him to be, right? Especially when Dame is out. Brook is a guy that you need to, mash the Brook, use his size button. And Brook had like 39 against the Wizards in a game earlier this season, so they've done it against this opponent even. Another game that the Bucks barely won at home against the Wizards, and probably should have lost, given Jordan Poole had the most wide open 3 in the history of mankind at the end of that game. But yeah, it's interesting. So Brook goes out, and I mean, you could argue maybe, well, don't go to Brook. He wasn't playing that well either. But with Bobby, he just looked so out of the flow in the fourth quarter. The shot selection, decision making, I thought was poor. And he's obviously a bad defender, so he's not helping you at all there. So really, his only utility is if he's helping offensively. And when you've got Giannis and Chris out there, obviously, you don't need him as much. It's not like a second unit situation where you're just going to throw him the ball and let Bobby Portis go to work. So I kept waiting. I was like, is he really just going to run Bobby 12 minutes this entire fourth quarter? And that's what Doc did. And so again, go big, go small. But I just felt like, man, it just was not helping going this route where you're giving Bobby kind of these intermediate lineups, and he just didn't have his offense going. So that was a problem. I think the problem with Beasley is it just seems like since day one, whether it was Griff and now Doc, it just seems like both guys have just decided that he's got to be treated like a guy who starts and closes every game and is not going to be treated like a situational player, which I think he is. And I think he's had games. I think last game where he hit a big 3 in the fourth quarter after struggling?
He was struggling throughout that Hawks game and hit some timely shots down the stretch.
Yeah. So I mean, again, it's not impossible, but Bees is one of those guys. If Bees doesn't shoot the ball well to start, I would just say all right, maybe we let's look for someone else to potentially give some help, because when it's ugly with him, it's ugly. And AJ has not really done much offensively in the past couple weeks, but he hit a couple of threes tonight when they were making their comeback. He had a big charge he took. Had a couple of really bad miscommunications.
Yeah, he did.
On defense, where twice in a matter of minutes, he basically blew a switch and miscommunication, and basically I think he was defending. Was it Jared Butler? Is that?
It was Butler. Yep.
Yeah. And both times, like basically AJ and the guy who was coming over for a potential switch, like just backed off. And I mean, literally just like, what are we doing, guys? You literally just leave the ball handler wide open for a three. I mean, it's like cardinal sin, right? Like leave the ball. You can't just leave the ball handler. So again, to what extent that was AJ versus, I think Giannis was involved in one of them. He looked pissed about it. Pat, I think, was involved in the other one. I'll go ahead and blame the rookie. No, he's not a rookie anymore, but the young guy probably.
The young buck.
So obviously AJ didn't necessarily cover himself in glory there the entire time either, but certainly had a much better game than Bees, who just was, again, like he was the poster child of that. What was it? 11 for 48, whatever it was, 3-point shooting night. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a question, like, in these high leverage playoff games, if Malik Beasley is not shooting the ball well, like is Doc just always going to play him over not even just AJ Green, but Pat Connaughton or somebody else who's proven, let's be honest, more than Malik Beasley in these kind of big moments. I mean, Malik Beasley shot so poorly last year, he fell out of the Lakers rotation entirely in the playoffs. So yeah, I think it's an open question. I mean, Jay Crowder's obviously seen a lot of run under Doc. A lot of it came when Chris was out. But it is interesting that it doesn't seem like he's a big believer in, kind of trying more of this Giannis the 5 with, likely Jay, Chris, and then, if healthy, it's, Dame and Malik or, Dame and Pat or something like that. Right. So something to monitor. Yeah. I mean, I will not be surprised at all if, in a month we're talking about Doc not playing, closing groups that we like because certainly I think what we've seen here lately has raised some questions. So I don't know. I mean, again, like we're too late in the season for this team to reinvent itself, and again, I'll go back, the good news is when their best players play, the numbers are great. When their best players are not playing, the numbers are really bad. When they play really good teams, the numbers are good. When they play everybody else, the numbers are underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah. And if you're looking for a silver lining with this Bucks team right now, like that's the one you carry in the playoffs, just looking at how they've been performing against better teams.
Yeah. So again, I mean, I think to me the net is you cannot trust this team. Never trust the Bucks is back.
Ooh, a throwback.
Little throwback. I certainly don't trust this team in the playoffs. Did I really trust the 2021 team going into the playoffs? Not really. I mean, both those teams are 46 and 26. That's what the 2021 team ended. This team was 2021 last week when they lost, I don't know, whichever disappointing loss that they had to get them to 46 and 26. So we just don't know what to make of this team. And obviously, Doc Rivers has not figured out how to magically make this team overcome its playing down to the level of the opponent problem. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to lose sleep over it because we've been seeing it all year. And good news, you're not going to have to play the Washington Wizards or the Memphis Grizzlies in the playoffs, Camille. So maybe the Bucks have a chance after all.
Yeah, maybe they do. I mean, that's a troubling trend that we've talked about, but there's another one that we briefly discussed early on about just how the Bucks have been playing on the road. I want to dive deeper into that with the playoffs coming up and then take a look ahead to the Grizzlies because this was the first night of a back-to-back for the Bucks. They're back home tomorrow or today when you're listening to this against the Grizzlies. So let's dive into that after this. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV, and it'll provide you access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So whether it's opening weekend for baseball, go Brewers, or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sport brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. Not to mention, there's also great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos. It's all there. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa's devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. So learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. As we wrap here, Frank, you mentioned in the first segment just about the Bucks road woes that they've been having so far. And I just want to ask you, is there any concern on your behalf about the Bucks on the road heading to the playoffs? Because
yes,
you mentioned how poor it's been, but here's the thing, to put it into context, of the top 8 teams in the East, the Bucks are now 18-20 on the road. The Magic is the only other team in the top 8 with a losing road record, and they're 17-19. Like, the Bucks have had some really big and some really ugly road losses. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, again, part of what made this so disappointing is like, I know you play down the competition. I know this is on the road, but we are weeks away from the playoffs at this point. Like, I need to see something from you to show me that you're building. And that was not there. Doc was asked about it after the game. I believe it was Eric Name, like you mentioned. And Doc was like, we just don't seem to bring the necessary professionalism on the road. And he mentioned taking notes about just the process, things that he wouldn't share with the media, but just not even just the players, but just from the whole operation of how the Bucks travel, and looking to make some changes there. So you already said you got some concern about the Bucks on the road. But again, this is why that second seed was so important for them, because you want to try to have home court for as long as possible. You hold on to that 2 seed. If you make it through the first 2 rounds, then that conference finals is where you lose that home benefit. But it's something that this Bucks team has shown us that they really do need. They need those home games at Fiserv Forum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the worst home team of the Bud era, or sorry, the worst road team of the Bud era was the 2021 championship team, which was 20-16. So they still had a winning record, but a little bit above 500. But the Bucks are too late in the year to get to 4 games above 500. And so, yeah, I mean, again, this is a veteran team. It's not like there's something inherently about their roster construction or lack of experience to suggest that they should have struggles on the road. But the numbers are what they are. And for whatever reason, the road and these mediocre teams have just been an Achilles heel for them all season. So I don't know if there was an explanation for it, then it would probably be solved. But they're just getting lucky that the teams below them have been basically as bad as them over the past few weeks, right? The Knicks lost in Miami tonight. Cleveland is taking care of Utah. So it's I don't know. I mean, this should have been a pretty comfortable cruise control type of mode to get to the 2 seed, but it just seems like the Bucks want nothing to do with the 2 seed. And I don't know. The Pacers and Heat are almost tied. Pacers are a half game up, 1 up in the win column over the Heat for the 6th spot. And so again, it's pretty tightly packed there. 6 and 7 are very close. And then the Sixers are in the 8th spot, Bulls 9 and Hawks 10. So, the 1st and 2nd seeds right now, if things went chalk with the plane and everything, good luck, right? You're getting the Heat or the Sixers, and Joel Embiid came back tonight. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of, my opinion generally is like, I don't really care who they play in the first round because, kind of like last year, it's like, well, if you lose in the first round, again, last year the circumstances obviously were unfortunate with Giannis's injury and everything, but okay, I think we can go ahead and say that wasn't a team that was going to win a championship, based on the way that they flamed out. And kind of similar now, it's just like, all right, we saw it when they won a title. They basically said, all right, well, we're not going to try to avoid the Heat, and they got the Heat and they took care of business. I would hope that they could do that again if they have to play the Heat, or if that matter, the Sixers. But again, I think the problem with this team is you just don't really know what you're going to get from them. And again, tonight, obviously missing Dame, yes, that matters, especially Pat Bev gets hurt on top of that, right? You literally have no no point guards, nobody who even vaguely looks like a point guard that that you can throw out there. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think, I'm sort of sick. It's sad, right? Giannis has been so great that I want to enjoy watching him play, at least in the regular season. But just with the kind of how this team is just unserious, once or twice a week with some of these games, it's just like, man, I just kind of want to hit the sim button and get to the playoffs and just figure out like whether these guys are for real or whether they're just going to turn into a pumpkin like they did last year.
If the Bucks would have kept up what we were seeing coming out of the break, I would have felt so much more confident as we head into the playoffs, but it has just continued to be this yo-yo between these really strong performances and then just some really inconsistent or disappointing play for the Bucks. Again, loss 113-117 to the Washington Wizards, the team that has lost 61 games this season so far, but the Bucks won't have to wait too long to get the taste of this game out of their mouth. They do have the Grizzlies at home on Wednesday. So second night of back-to-back for the Bucks. You hope to see them bounce back. They owe the Grizzlies one after they went to Memphis ahead of the All-Star break and laid an egg against another team with a lot of guys on the roster where if you're
Memphis
watching
Hustle.
if you're watching that game and you know who you're seeing on the court, you're a basketball sicko, and I mean that with the greatest compliment that I possibly can. We mentioned Bucks are 18-20 on the road. Best they can get this up to now at this point is 20-20. The next 5 games the Bucks have are at home: Grizzlies, Raptors, Knicks, Celtics, Magic. Then they finish the season on the road against the Thunder and the Magic. So we're going to get out of here. We'll wrap up Locked On Bucks there.
By the way, but Camille, I've just been blocking out the possibility that Dame has an actual like legitimate injury. He was listed out with a groin today, personal reasons. The prior game, I think is one of his kids, or does he have to? I don't know.
His
if he has
birthday.
twins
It was
or
like his
whatever,
son's
but
birthday.
yeah, it was like a birthday a couple of days ago. So I think the assumption was that he was kind of taking a couple of days off to do that. I hope he doesn't have an actual groin injury, because
like,
that would be a really bad. Well, don't ask on an off day. Don't ask where he would get a groin injury. But yeah, by the time we chat next, we'll know the truth, and hopefully he's suited up and steers the Bucks to a more convincing performance against the Memphis Grizzlies. Desmond Bane is out. John Morant is out. Derrick Rose is out. John Conchar is doubtful. Marcus Smart, Yuta Watanabe, Vince Williams Jr., and Zaire Williams are all out tomorrow night. So
Hustler back.
The Hustler back, and Gigi Jackson's going to go for 50, and it's going to be glorious and totally upsetting, I'm sure, Camille. I can't wait to talk about it.
Oh, I hope the Bucks show some hustle tomorrow, because after this one, this was already tough enough. Let's not stack bad habits on top of each other, Bucks. But regardless of what the outcome is for the Bucks and Grizzlies game, we will be back with more Locked On Bucks for you tomorrow. For Frank and myself, we'll catch you then. Take care.